speak this morning. One of the reasons is that the De La Salle Blackfeet Indian School, of which he is the president, is one of the organizations supported by St. Mary Catholic Community. But I dare say it's the one we know the least about. The other organizations are in Helena. And when I talked to different ones of you about coming, you said, yes, I would like to come. I don't know anything about the school. So by the end of today, you will know more about the school and about Blackfeet life and culture. So that was one of the reasons. The other is that I think many of us understand and have maybe experienced in our own lives the value of education. It's a life changer, a game changer. It opens opportunities for the individual. The impact of that, I think, spread to families, spread to community, inspiring them and strengthening them. And also helping individuals and families and communities become the people that God created them to be. So it's extremely important. And education for all is a major justice issue. And the final reason is, this is just kind of my personal opinion, but I think many of us, self-included, live in our own little orbits with people with very similar life circumstances to our own. And we often don't know very much about other people in different life circumstances that are sharing our time and space on this planet. And as we gain that kind of knowledge, it enables us, it enriches us for one thing, but it enables us to stand in solidarity with people, with more of our neighbors, of different kinds of people from different backgrounds and circumstances. So, and solidarity is one of the major tenets of Catholic social teaching, and our ministry and our parish are based on those tenets. So it's another justice issue. So about Brother Dale, he has spent his life, I dare say, again, serving young people in education in Guatemala in the 1980s during a civil war. So one can only imagine what that might have been like. Also in Kansas City with working class families, again, working with young people and education. And most recently in Browning on the Blackfeet Reservation for the past 11 years. This is your 12th year, right? So he was also a finalist for the 2023 Lumen Christi Award, based on his life's work, which I just briefly summarized, which I think speaks to the power of the Holy Spirit working through him and in him throughout his life. And finally, I'm going to tell a quick story. When we were working, I was working on getting in touch with Brother Dale, and I was talking on the phone, Dave and I were, to a friend of ours in Great Falls named Tom Katinsky, who some of you may know. He lived in Helena for some time. And Tom, without knowing what I was doing here in the ministry, said, you know, we were hiking in Glacier the other day and we ran into the coolest guy. He said, you know, I am remembering this. He said, I grew up in Chicago in a rough neighborhood, and the Christian brothers ran the school that I went to, and they were good for us. We needed them. And he said, this guy is a Christian brother, and he's president of the De La Salle Blackfeet School. I said, interesting, Tom. I've been trying to get in touch with you to speak at our parish. So, help me welcome Brother Dale, a cool guy.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Not sure how much is true, but I'll let you read the chat. Actually, I met Tom one of my first years here, and if you've been up to Glacier National Park and have done Scenic Point, you appreciate the opportunity to take a small rest, and people who have gone to the top and are coming down know that you want that little rest. And so they're eager to enter into conversations with you. And that's how I met Tom, just by coincidence. Can I take this off?
Yes, I think so.
I don't want to cause problems. Okay. I'm going to do this because with the slideshow, that probably would be the best way. Just to give you an idea of what I plan to do today is, initially I'm going to present a slideshow that will feature the LaSalle Blackfeet School. And then I'd like to move a little bit more into elements that specifically take a look at issues of peace and justice. Because it would be one of the major reasons why we are in Browning, Montana. That is the De La Salle Christian Brothers. Just a little bit on my background. I grew up on a small dairy farm in Iowa. Was privileged in many ways because it's no longer in the next generations. I grew up in a very Catholic area, German Catholic. So basically, primary school and high school were almost free of any kind of tuition on the part of my parents. So I had Catholic education there. From that, I entered the Christian Brothers, having really no idea who they were. I just knew I wanted to teach and made contact, and 50-some years later, I'm here. I worked in really traditional high schools for the first 10 years of my life, both in Memphis as well as in St. Louis. Worked very closely with the organization called the Key Club, which if you're Kiwanis members, that's their high school component. And so we did a number of really great kinds of service projects with the kids. The kids. Some of those kids are in retirement now. But they've got some wonderful stories, and they've done some great things, inspired by that direct contact with people in need. After that, I went to, I was in Guatemala, as mentioned, and was living with Brother James Miller, who is beatified as of 2019, assassinated in Huehuetenango. Could go into that, but I won't, because that's not why I've been brought here. Coming back, I served in the Diocese of Kansas City, St. Joseph for, again, about 12 years, working in a program that was basically for adult faith formation and leadership training in the parishes. We had as many as 7 cohorts going on at the same time. We were an office of 7 people as well. But I primarily, because of my time in Guatemala, was doing a lot of that for the Spanish-speaking community in Kansas City and St. Joseph, Missouri as well. And then after that, the Sisters of Charity of Leavenworth, who have a great relationship with Helena as well. Sister Edna told me one time there were 300 in this city. That almost seems impossible, but and so they asked me to help them get started with the Cristo Rey School in Kansas City, which takes high school students and associates them with different corporate entities. The corporate entity pays half of their tuition. The other portion of it either comes through fundraising, but also each child it's determined how much they can afford. Maximum, I think, at that time was $2,500. After I helped them through their first process of accreditation, I got a call from our superior, and he wanted to talk to me. And through email, I knew that there were 2 positions that were open, and I figured that was why he was going to talk to me. He asked if I would be willing to take a look at De La Salle Blackfeet School in Browning, who had the president had moved on. So I came up, and I liked the challenges. I have to admit that. And I've had people, who really know nothing about Browning, Montana, that said, "You live there?" It's the same thing, that a lot of people, when they come up, they talk about the beauty of Glacier National Park and the mountains and everything. I admire that too, but I've also realized that you have to befriend and admire everything else that's around there. Because there is a certain beauty that's there. And there's a beauty in the people. So, when I went up there, I figured, well, I'll be turning 65 pretty soon, so after that, I can choose wherever I want to go. I haven't had to make a choice since then. I think I'm where I need to be, and so, and it is where possible, I'd like to share with you a little bit about the school. The one thing that I think is important as a background on this, two things. One of them, for a long time, we depended on volunteer teachers from an organization which was out of the Salle movement and everything. That, because of a number of reasons, came to a halt 2 years ago. So now we are hiring mostly local teachers, although I still have some who came to us as volunteers, but then have stayed on. The technology person is in his 12th year, 13th year. He's a year before me. And so, but that obviously has increased our demand on financial resources and things like that. So I've been spending more and more of my time raising money rather than giving a direction to the school. But one of the other things, COVID has had a devastating impact on us, and probably all of you who are in education realize it's had an impact on education. It's had an impact on society. We have fourth graders coming into our school who do not recognize letters. Now, I understand that's kindergarten and first grade. So, I can sit here and make complaints about what happened, how, if they were in school, how did they make it this far? But the Lasallian approach is we take the student where they are and we move them forward. Let's not spend a lot of time criticizing the past. This is the present, let's move forward. Okay, so I'm going to move rather quickly through this. I'll sit down so that I can flip the screens as quickly as possible. De La Salle Blackfeet School was founded in 2001. I'm actually only the second president, which is kind of unusual that there'd be, we're in our 23rd year and we're only with two main administrators. I do have a full-time principal, Brother Dylan. He's fairly young. He's in his second year with us. Has had other experiences, but that has taken off a lot of the responsibilities for me. I'd like to offer opportunity at the end of this for questions either about the school or anything else that I have to say. In terms of working with our school, we would say that we try to blend three components. One is we're Catholic. Two, we're Lasallian, which means that kind of like what I talked about just a few minutes ago, our concept is that we would take a student where they are and move them forward. We have placement tests. We do not have, you have to make this particular grade. It's important that we know that a student doesn't recognize letters coming into the fourth grade. And we've made some adjustments to respond to that. And then also the Blackfeet. And there's some interesting components of the Blackfeet's spirituality that fits very, very closely with Catholicism. Their Okan, which is constructed by women, but men and women participate in it. They have 12 poles in it, and there's a center pole. They say 12 apostles, and Jesus being the center. Probably, where that came from, I don't know, but we go with it. Okay, we try to work as much as possible with having our students understanding, especially instructional kinds of things in the Blackfeet language. I find it very difficult. I can do fairly well in Spanish, but afterwards I realized that so much of this is done phonetically from the French. an ancient French. And so some of it makes sense on the sounds if you understand how that's put together. One of the biggest difficulties is that there's no academy for the Blackfeet language in the United States. There is one in Canada, but that is not the language that our elders speak. So there's a little bit of tension between what they're trying to teach in the schools as well as our own, and the elders say, that's not the way we say it. Okay, so it just adds a little additional issue to it. In many ways, a number of people who come to visit us, especially if they're coming from our high schools and colleges and have somewhat of an understanding of our founding, they would say this truly is a school in the image of our founder. I can't imagine it. The early brothers would have as many as 70 students in the classroom. They were ruffians, basically. I mean, they were children of the artisan class and laborers. So yeah, but they were basically children who would have been abandoned during the daytime by their parents, and all of a sudden they were in a classroom. It's the reason why, at the time of our founder's death, at the age of 67, over 100 brothers had died, most of them in their 20s. So you know that was a rough way to live and everything, but we're here today. This just gives you an idea. We are in a little over 80 countries, certainly not as well known as the Jesuits, but we actually run more high schools than they do. They run more universities and colleges than we do. We have a few. In the United States, we have 6 universities. The closest one here would be, I don't know, probably St. Mary's College in Moraga, California, which some people know because they're competitors with Gonzaga. St. Mary's University of Minnesota, which is in Winona, Minnesota, is where it started, and in the Twin Cities. Our building is a relatively simple building. It was built as the CCD building for the parish. We have since added on some classrooms. Most of these classrooms those 2 classrooms were built by people who came in the summertime volunteering for a week or 2. We continue to do that kind of stuff. We always begin the morning with an assembly where we bring our students together for prayer, for background in terms of our Lasallian charism, elements of the Blackfeet language and traditions and things like that. So, but it is an integral part of our day. You might notice Brother Dylan wears the traditional garb. I haven't worn it in many, many years. Different formation and things like that. And part of it is I was a science teacher, and we never did our labs in robes. One of the elements that certainly holds us together is that whole sense of community. We would say that the only way to really provide an education for youth is to find some way that there's a trusting relationship. And if that trusting relationship is there, the student is far more open to learning. On Fridays, we always have fun day at that assembly. And so most of the time, it's something that's arranged by a staff person. Sometimes we have students doing it now as well. So there's always that piece of it. We believe very much in getting to know our students, no matter what level that they're on, whether they're in 4th grade or they're in 8th grade, but there's an interaction there. We always begin with the morning with what we call the salutation. We provide, and I think we get into that in just a minute, we will have about 35 high school and college and parish groups that come during the course of the year. They come for a week. We have a bunkhouse that facilitates sleeping quarters for 14. Fairly nice bunkhouse anymore. But they'll come, they'll work in our classrooms, usually 2 or 3 in each classroom or each grade, working kind of as teachers' aides, although we have teacher aides as well. So they also participate in that. Because of the consequences of lack of education, I'm going to say, before students come to us, this last summer we decided to combine what would be 4th and 5th grade, but it would just simply say, we no longer distinguish whether the student is in 4th grade or 5th grade. They're either in their 1st year or their 2nd year, and they might be in their 3rd year, or they might be in their 4th year in what is the academy. We have decided that it is unfair to continue to move a child along if they haven't at least got the rudimentary tools to work in middle school. So it'll be, can they function socio-emotionally as well as academically in the middle school? Our reputation in the town is very good. 95, 96, 97% of our graduates go on to graduate from high school. In the public school system, it's lucky if it makes 50%. And you have to take into consideration that students coming out of East Glacier Public School, which is a very small school as well, Cutswood, which is an immersion program in ours, probably make up, well, they would probably put in 30 students, 35 students into that graduating class. So they're almost a third of the graduating class. Our graduates have been valedictorian and salutatorian, and I'm going to say probably the majority of the years. So we're not, as you can tell, we're not necessarily only taking the brightest. But one of the things I believe that has been found is that we develop a certain level of self-esteem for our students, so they'll take responsibility for their education. If they're not finding it, they'll ask the questions, they'll get the help until they finally have it.
Yes.
We work very closely with the parish, both Father Ed Kohler as well as Father Rod Ermentinger have taken great joy in the fact that they don't have to support a school. Right now our budget is close to $1 million, and tuition is maybe about $35,000. So tuition really means almost nothing for us. But we find ourselves with students asking to be baptized, to receive First Communion. Confirmation is generally a kind of a rite of passage almost to graduate from school. Not everybody is, but they'll make that choice, but we provide the opportunity for that kind of training. As I mentioned before, everyone's welcomed. Is the school for everyone? No, it's not. Some schools thrive in the opportunities that are offered in public school in the larger system. They thrive there. Some of them are just overwhelmed. One of the concerns for our parents is what do they do with their student who is finding their niche in a smaller school. And so some of them have gone to some of the surrounding areas that have smaller schools. Occasionally we have some who have gone into the Catholic school system, either Loyola Sacred Heart in Missoula or Central Catholic in Great Falls. Problem there is housing in all of those places for the child. Usually parents decide, or grandparents decide to move to those areas and provide it. We do have a good relationship with a couple of our Lasallian schools that will provide that. But again, parents are reluctant, and you can understand this. Parents are reluctant to send a 14-year-old a couple thousand miles away. So, but some of them have made that choice and have done quite well with it. We have a number of places where we can do retreats. Sometimes it's done at the school, sometimes it's done at the mission. And when I refer to the mission, it's the old Holy Family mission that was operated by the Jesuits and the Ursuline sisters from 1890 to 1940.
For those of you who are somewhat familiar with the issues of the lawsuit and everything with Bishop George Leo Thomas, most of those issues happen to have been with St. Ignatius, which was open much longer than ours were. As I said, well, I'll get into that afterwards. Okay. One of the models for ours is that, that Jesus lives in our hearts and Jesus lives there forever. And so our kids will automatically say, if we say live Jesus in our hearts, they will all join in with forever. I might mention this in Montana, the brothers of Father Rice are probably more well known than we are because they ran the Butte High School for many years. They were founded by, theirs out of an Irish tradition. They actually sent their novices to be in formation with us, with Father Rice, because the De La Salle Christian Brothers at that time, who were primarily in France, weren't quite ready to take on the issues of the British and everything to send teachers over to Ireland. So Father Rice said, well, you're not willing to do it, we'll set up. So, whereas the De La Salle Christian Brothers, the closest school probably to Browning, Montana would have been, I think it was Shannon High School or something like that in Fargo, North Dakota. It's a long way away. Probably the closest school to us now would be the schools that we have in Yakima, Washington. Probably is the closest LaSallian school. This is, a lot of hands-on kind of work. The one advantage of having our LaSallian volunteers was that they're right out of college. So they had the enthusiasm, the curiosity, and the willingness to go forward with a lot of things with our students. At the end of the year, the end of the day, rather, we have a silent study hall because we find that far too many of our students do not have a home life that will permit them to do homework and things like that. We try to work with their parents, but we know that some of our parents are at the casino till 2 o'clock in the morning and not taking care of their kids. And I'll talk a little bit about that generational trauma as well. We also have one-on-one tutoring, especially whenever we have immersion groups coming in. And as I said, we have about 35 immersion groups that are coming from different high schools and colleges. We're trying to work with some of the local high schools in Montana that they do this now. A lot of them have never had a contact with an American Indian population in an educational format. And so Carroll College has come, Providence has come, the universities have. And we've had a few volunteers that have come out of those structures. So they'll provide that. We do, as we said, we have this immersion program, Okinisukokua, the Common Sea, and so they do a lot of one-on-one kinds of things. And our teachers are familiar with using them in that program. I'll give them a brief orientation. You don't do the work for the student. You keep drawing from them how the answers and things like that. Interestingly enough, the group that I picked up yesterday, group that I dropped off in the airport yesterday was an all-girls school from Chicago. It's the only all-girls LaSallian school in the world. They were looking, their community is very, very small. I think they're down to about 12 sisters. They run primarily hospitals and things like that, and elder care. But they have this one high school that is doing quite well, and they went out to try to find a community that would take over for them. We finally said yes, and it's been good. It's been a very good relationship. Right now, I picked up a group from New York City, the Mary Lewis Academy. It's also all girls, so it'll be interesting. But everybody has been very pleased with these groups. These are just different slides of our students working with their students. sometimes there's a concern, you know, so how do our students react to the immersion students with having a new group every year, every week? I said, they'll come in on Monday morning and want to know if we have a group, and they'll be disappointed if we don't have a group. So it's worked out very, very well. We provide a fair amount of athletics, but you know, if you know anything about the Native American in Montana, basketball and cross country would be their fortes. We won't talk about football. I have been to a number of football games, and always with the person that I go with, I said, if it's halftime and we're losing 50-0, we're going home. I've done that a few times. So we've actually had some championships at our school, and you know, that's kind of hard to do when you only have, you know, 15 students to a class, so sometimes. But, you know, I know that if we would give a basketball to our students, they wouldn't care whether we had any classes or not. They play basketball the whole day. We do have a number of, this is a cross-country activities. We do fairly well on that, more so with our graduates. A number of our graduates were part of the Browning state champions this year. So then towards the end of the day, after their silent study program, then we call it enrichment. It provides opportunities for the manual arts, the fine arts, practical arts, and things like that. And plus it also brings together students from all the different grades. They're not separated, well, it's only eighth grade, they're all together. So it helps build community as well with that. Sometimes we have parents who come in. A little difficult for parents or anyone to come in because it's only a half hour Monday through Thursday, but someone will do it. We oftentimes will bring guest speakers, particularly on the cultural area, but also now very much on the health. Because of the diet of the Blackfeet, traditionally it was meat. They had almost no carbohydrates in their diet. Berries, that's it. They have no root crops at all. And so diabetes, obesity, heart cancer, all of that are huge. And so we also try to instill in our students, you know, yeah, that snack, you know, the junk food that you eat way too much of will have consequences later on in life. So let's see if we can control that as much as possible. Yeah, these are just different guest speakers that we've had over the years. One of the things we did, Boone and Crockett, I don't know if any of you are familiar with that organization. It's out of DePuyer, but it's a program that was started by President Theodore Roosevelt and his cronies to try to figure out how to the interface between the wild animals of the mountains and ranchers and things like that, and how can you coexist? But they also have a program for high school or for grade school students, and so we bring ours down there. Helps with in terms of conservation and things. But this year they offered a day with archery, so our students very much enjoyed that. This is more community events. We'll at times invite different community members in for some of the celebrations that we have. Try to understand that we are not an entity apart from the community, but we're actually a part of that. So we'll also have activities like bingo and things. COVID also hit us hard on that, but we're slowly bringing that back. Social justice outreach is a number of things. We participated in Orange Shirt Day. We participated and organized the missing Indigenous women programs and things like that, inviting the other schools to participate in that. We also participate with the community college on the Bear River Massacre. Some people would call it the Marias River Massacre. This is the orange shirt, and this year our 7th and 8th graders went up to commemorate this event with some of our Canadian entities. We also provide for our 8th graders, this was for the presentation to the legislators to try to get an Indigenous Peoples' Day rather than Columbus Day, or have them both together. It failed, but they'll keep working at it. We had some good speakers on that, so very proud of them on that. We do have days of service. The council has now decided that we will no longer use plastic bags, which will be a major shift if you've been to Browning in the last 30 years. Although now I said I have to pick up paper bags before I was picking out plastic ones. We do a nativity play every year, utilizing our students. We have a number of class trips that I've talked about. This one is the Canadian trip. We also will have our 8th graders going to Chicago and Notre Dame, where they're hosted by Notre Dame University for 2 days. And that's also an opportunity for them to participate with other schools that are part of the American Indian Catholic Schools Network, which is out of the Notre Dame, somewhat out of Notre Dame as well. Commencement and graduation, we do have a graduate support program. We continue to follow our students all the way through high school, making sure that, it's the same way that our kids going on to high school, where they have a lot more freedom of making choices, poor ones or good ones. Same thing as students going off to college. Usually that first semester is a little rough. We make sure that they get back on track with that and everything. And we'll call parents up. You want your child going this direction or another direction? So we'll continue that. About 75 to 80% of our graduates from high school, that graduated from us as well, will go on for some kind of training. It could be 4-year college, it could be a certificate at the community college, things like that. A lot of opportunity. If you know the De La Salle Christian Brothers, the initials after ours is FSC, which really stands for the French, or the Latin Fratres Scholarum Christianorum, which is the Brothers of the Christian Schools. Our students in our high school said it didn't stand for that at all. What it stood for is Forever Selling Chances. So, and in that tradition, I'm leaving some raffle tickets on your table. If you're interested in that, you may do so. That's the end of this. First of all, any questions on what time does Mass start? 10:30? Okay, this goes usually how long?
Till about 10:20.
Okay. I thought maybe say, 10 minutes ago. So, any questions just about the school? Yes?
What's the student population?
Well, this year we're down. Our upper grades are close to capacity or capacity. Our 7th grade has a waiting list. We generally say 15, 16 is the maximum that we'll take. So if every grade was full, we would be right at 80. We generally have never made it to 80. Usually we're at 70, maybe a little over 70. This year we're only a little over 60, and a lot of that had to do with forming the academy. Parents aren't quite sure what we're going to do. And I'm sure some parents are really concerned that their child might be in the academy for 3 years. And social promotion is, I don't know if it's true all over. It's true in Browning, Montana. If you as a parent says my child is such and such age, they belong in sophomore year of high school. They're not going to ask, the school doesn't even have a right to ask, well, what are their grades like? Can they survive here? We have a huge number in the public school system are in what is called the Buffalo Hyde Academy. And the Buffalo Hyde Academy is for the student who doesn't do well in the normal system. And so it can be a place where the student will get the kind of attention that they're needed. They only go there when they want some help from the teacher, otherwise they do it. they have an overabundance of students who want to go into that program. It's not meant for that. But that's why some of our students go. We had a graduate who took the opposite side of that. He was basically becoming the sole wage earner for the family. Dad was in very, very bad physical health, and so mom really had to be there to take care of him. So we couldn't find him. He wasn't in the high school. Well, afterwards we found out he graduated from high school by going to the academy in 2 years. He got his associate degree from the community college in those 2 years and had a job. So it can provide in very tough situations, a way out for people. That's an exception. So we're trying to work with the reality of the students that we're getting. The community college, we have one of the members on our board is a professor there. Prior to COVID, there were 600 students enrolled in the community college. They can't even make 300 right now. Not only that, they had established probably quite a few years ago in the math department. They started a program that was called, I think, 85 or 90. Meant that they weren't quite ready for the 100 level course in mathematics. They needed some background. They had to reduce it down to 65. So you have to do the 65 thing to get into the 85 or 90, and then you can go on. I hope there are some great conversations going on between the college community and the high school community, because that has to be addressed. Although, as I'm a science teacher, but I also know a little bit about biology or about mathematics. They'll say that if the brain itself, if things haven't been developed by 5th grade, it's not going to happen. They tell you don't struggle with having a student learn how to multiply if they don't have it by the 5th grade. Just give them the calculator, because you're not going to get it beyond that. Those are science studies that show that. So, where does some of this lead us? Well, we have spent a lot of energy and time trying to figure out where the social emotional development has lagged. We're talking about historical trauma. We're talking about generational trauma in our community in Browning. The more I think about this, I realize, that all of us, to a certain extent, have some historical and generational trauma. It's part of living. I'm aware of the fact that my name is, the name Mooney is Irish, right? 7 out of my 8 great-grandparents were born in Germany. I'm more German than I am Irish, I know that. My father even understood German. That's the only line that would have been there from the Irish at all. People didn't leave Europe because things were great. So, and the more we know about how that becomes a part of our DNA, who I am is charged somewhat by the experiences that my great-grandparents and beyond that. So I think it helps us get a little closer to what our students have. The one thing that our students said, first of all, as one of my board members said, brother, you have to remember we are only the 4th generation out of the teepee. So there were, their great-grandparents were nomadics. I used to think, when I first came, I said, okay, so the teepee is your summer housing. What about your winter housing? The teepee. It had an inner lining to it, but,
I don't care what you do with the teepee, you're not gonna be able to get it very warm, okay? Now, they did move more into the forested areas where they would be protected against the wind and things like that. And evidently the bison also were sharp enough that they came off the prairies and moved into the more wooded areas. So, but you have that. And then, as I said, virtually all of their food was from the bison or from the elk and antelope. So they're, and then all of a sudden the government is giving them flour and lard and things like that. One would expect that there's going to be some health problems to it. So what we have tried to do with the whole historical trauma is approach it from as calm of a perspective as possible. One of the things that we learn from experience, that if you tell one of our students, for example, please close the window, they won't jump to that. They'll eventually close the window, but you have to, they need that time. They process it differently than most of us would do. And so, and you just, they will do it, and they're not, but it's not going to be as quick as we thought they would be doing it. So that's one of the things that we have noticed, how they process things differently than we who come out of more of a European position. The historical trauma is also tied very much into the generational trauma, because how is it that parents understood the changes that needed to take place as they moved from a nomadic situation into a place that you would call home? I was amazed when I first started at Browning. I talked to a young gentleman who's now working in the public school system. Well, he was working at that time for the public school system, but he was he was working with students who did not necessarily know where they were going to spend the night. And he had 150 cases. We have very few of those students. And the reason we probably have very few of those students is that we know our parents fairly well. Now, we are aware of the fact that so-and-so may not see his bed until 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock at night. Why? Because he's going to sleep on the couch in the living room. But everybody else is watching TV and things like that, so he's not able. So, we know that some of our students are not coming well rested. That would be something we would call as a generational trauma, because parents don't necessarily know how to be parent. And they'll readily admit that. And so and obviously you can understand, it's very difficult to make demands on parents. We can say, so-and-so doesn't seem to be getting enough rest because he or she falls asleep during school time, has a hard time, when they fall asleep, they have a hard time waking up. Well, that would mean that they went into a pretty deep sleep. So we can talk about that, and hopefully the parent will look at things. Technology has been devastating, but that's not unique to the Blackfeet. I remember one time I was giving the reflection at our communion service because Father Ed was not there, and I was talking about addictions and things like that. And I said, like you wouldn't think of spending 8 hours on your cell phone. Kid says, yeah, I do. I don't know. I didn't grow up with that. I mean, I grew up remembering the first television in our house. So, and afterwards I'm thinking, there wasn't a lot to watch on television then either. So unless you were fine watching that
signal that came on after it went out of business or out of transmission. But it was the issues. Parents, I don't think, really know what to do with the technology because it is a gift, but it also has to be managed. We keep encouraging our parents to say at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, you take the cell phones into your bedroom. You make sure that they're charged for the next day and things like that. But we know that some of our students are up till 2 o'clock in the morning with texting and things like that. Not a very, very good choice for them. This, as mentioned, our school depends very, very much on grants, on donations, different projects that we have, accounting for about 95% of it. Someone said, oh, the De La Salle Christian Brothers will take care of it. Well, I wish they would, but they're not going to. I mean, they will help us certainly, but and the diocese also helps. I certainly, every place I speak, I thank you for supporting the annual Catholic Appeal. The diocese has been giving us $25,000 a year. Now, I'm going to have a conversation with Bishop Vedder and say, $25,000 in 2002 is very different from $25,000 in 2022. So I don't know if I'll get anywhere with it, but I can at least bring it up. And yet we're real clear. We're not a parish school, and the parish probably wouldn't be able to manage it. You talk to any parish that still has a grade school, they realize that so much of their resources go towards trying to maintain the school. So, I'm open to any questions or conversations. Yes, ma'am.
So, traditionally, what grades do you cover? And for those who, if you have high school, that's one thing. But for those who choose at the end of 8th grade to go into the public school, how do you help them transition?
Okay, good question. We only offer 4th through 8th grade.
Okay.
So our students are either coming from the public school system, home education, which is the state of Montana, because of its libertarian approach, does not have much control over home education. I know that in the Browning School District, there are 21 entities that are informed of Title I, Title II, Title III, etc. We're the only ones who come to that meeting. Most of them are homeschooling. And it might well be that they don't need don't want to get involved in the financial issues and things like that, and that's fine. I just don't know whether I'm not sure how many people are prepared for it. I mean, if you're an educated person, yes, you could probably go ahead, certainly through middle school. High school, I think, is a lot more challenging. So our students will be coming in from either the public school or, in some cases, from East Glacier. The school up in Babb only goes through 6th grade, so 7th and 8th grade we'll get a couple of students coming in from Babb. But Babb's 45 minutes away. So, and in the wintertime, that can be a real interesting trek. But some of them do it. Most of them have a place they can stay in town when the weather really gets bad. A few of them will come over from Cutswoods. And all of them are fairly well prepared in things. I can't always say that for the public school system, but I know that some of the parents are coming to us because they understand their child is not where they need to be, and they're hoping that we can move them on. I'm not opposed to providing that kind of service, but I also know that it places a lot of pressure on our teachers in order to bring people from 1st grade up to 8th grade within 3 or 4 years. I think that can be it is a challenge. we will help our students in transition into high school through a number of things. One of them, some of our teachers provide after-school classes for math and mathematics and language arts and things like that, so that they know that they are ready for the high school classes. We will also, if a student is pretty proficient in mathematics in particular, we will talk to the parents so that they go up and advocate for their child to be in Algebra 1 or wherever they're supposed to be. We have found out that our teachers, they can't do that. Legally, they're not permitted to. Now, I don't know why it's why a teacher of a student wouldn't be able to advocate for their student as they move on, but that's the law. We also have two of our teachers have some periods off to go up to the high school. We work with the counselors up there to get to make sure that we can continue to meet with them. We'll invite them to come down for if they need additional tutoring and things like that. That's provided. Sometimes we will also work with the public schools, so they have a number of programs. Our students don't necessarily know that those programs exist, even though they're published and things like that, but that's true with everything. Sometimes you have to actually put point 1 to point 2 to point 3 to get them to that. Okay, any other, yes?
Oh, you might have mentioned this, and I missed it, but with the Blackfoot Native spirituality mentioned much, and discussed most in the school in conjunction with this.
Well, probably much more than I'm aware of, because I'm not in the classroom all that much. But a number of our teachers are also fairly immersed in some of the Blackfeet spirituality, particularly the sweats. There'll be some people that are in Sunday morning or at Mass, and in the afternoon they spend 3.5 hours in the sweats. And the sweats, it's 4 processes, and before each one, there's prayers and things like that before you go back in. That's the sweats in particular. The use of sweetgrass is also quite common. We'll smudge, at different events in our school and things like that. One time, one of the deacons up there had tobacco in the pipe, and he was passing around because that's a sign for peace and everything. Well, we had a group of immersion students, and the supervisor said, "We can't have those kids through it." And I said, "Well, you might." I said, "This is a cultural experience. You might rethink that, because you might be saying more than what you want to say by not accepting it." So. Now, the traditional tobacco of the Blackfeet is not the tobacco that you get out of Kentucky and places like that, but it's almost impossible to find the original tobacco that the Blackfeet used. And they had an interesting way of cultivating it. They would plant it in there where they had spent their winter before they went out, and then they would harvest it when they came back. But I was talking to people at the trading post. They no longer have a resource for the traditional tobacco. So most people are using just regular pipe tobacco now.
What is the acceptance requirements to get into the school?
You want to come?
Oh,
Yes.
so anyone can go?
Yes. That would be our Lasallian tradition. It is, you want to be there. Now, you're going to have to continue to show that you want to be there. Occasionally, we have students who want to be there. They think they want to be there, and then they realize that we start at 8 o'clock in the morning and we go to 4:30. And they're going, that's a long time. One time I was presenting at our tribal council meeting, and one of the councilmen said, "How do the students deal with it?" I said, "Well, we're pretty upfront on that. That's our schedule before you come in. Now, some of them don't realize, they're used to getting out at 2:30 or 3, and all of a sudden they're there till 4:30. But for the most part, it's not an issue. They know it, and with providing time for doing assignments and things like that, it gets a good start on them. Even though they might not finish it, they'll be there when they can get some assistance from different teachers or other students. And then after that, our parents love it, going to 4:30, because then, if they work until they work till 5, well, they know that the kids are going to be safe until they pick them up. There's really no objection from our parents for that. But besides, we will have, I would say probably 90% of our students are involved at least in one of the sports, some of them in 2 and 3. And so, we're operating until 6:30, 7 o'clock every day. It is a place that our students, for the most part, want to be. If they don't want to be there, they'll make it so bad for their parents, they'll have them pulled out. Rarely do we ask a student to leave. It happens, but it shouldn't. Okay? Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
And Les Browning was your presence. Where might you have gone? What was your other choice?
Where was well, I would have continued probably at the Cristo Rey School in Kansas City. There was another school that was without a president at that time, and I was in Memphis. I probably could have said, well, that's where I would like to go, but maybe, of course, they thought the reason that Browning would be a good fit for us was because in Guatemala, I was working very much with the Mayan Indians down there, and we had a boarding school, not a boarding, we had a boarding, it was a dorm, where 150 young indigenous men lived, and then they went to our school. And somebody said, well, we should do that here, should have a boarding thing. I said, no. I said, that's 24/7. that's very, and I'm thinking, Guatemala when I was there was quite different. I mean, most of the people in their villages, if they had electricity, that was, meant they had lights. Didn't mean they had TV or anything like that when I was there, so a little different. Anyone else? Yes.
I find it interesting that you started grade for the level of 4. Is there a reason for that, or is it
Well,
financial, or?
We originally started in grade 5. It's a part of what we call the San Miguel system, which had started probably in the early 80s, and it started in our urban sites, and we knew that there were a number of people who would benefit from our school but weren't prepared for it. And so we decided, because we were running basically high schools, and so in most of our major cities, we went to offering a middle school. So that meant it was either going to be 7th and 8th or 6th, 7th, and 8th. Then studies started showing that 5th grade was really the key year in education, both in terms of reading skills as well as in terms of math skills. So there was a lot of schools decided to go down to 5th grade, and that's where we started. But in Browning, after we had opened up, the year we were opening up our 8th grade, we also opened up 4th, and the reason is that the public school they have different buildings, and 1st and 2nd is together, 3rd is by itself, then it was 4th, 5th, and 6th. And so it made sense for us, because these students were going to go into a different building, probably have different teachers and everything. So we moved down to 4th grade. That's the reason we're there. In our accreditation processes, our parents will say they would like a K through 8, a K through 12. The one accreditation team said, because you have such a success in what you're doing now, have you thought about really recruiting? And because we don't recruit. and doing double sections on all of that so that they're ready for high school. It's always been an issue of space and of teachers and of finances. So they're all coming together. My tendency, because my background is more in high school, I would go in that direction. But I also know, some teachers say, if we get a fourth grader who can't read, and we've had them since kindergarten, then it's our fault. So there's some validity going in that direction as well. So, and I'm at an age that I want to say, whoever makes that decision, it won't be me. So. Okay, if there are no other questions, I'll just point out you can take these trifolds with you. If you want to pass them on to anybody, you're more than welcome to do so. I did leave envelopes as well as raffle tickets on your table. If you want to take them, you're more than welcome to do so. I understand that if you want to, you can just drop it into the collection basket next week or the following week. They'll get it to us. I want to thank you for this opportunity, and I'll be around if anybody has any personal questions. I'm more than happy to answer them.
There
Thank
are
you.
also baskets on the way out the door. Thank you so much.